Elizabeth. Elizabeth, can you go to Tools option, Tools menu from the Skype? Yeah, Tools and go to Options. From this Tools, you can find. Let me show you. Let me share my desktop. Can you see my desktop? From here, go to Tools, Options, and you can see Privacy. In the Privacy settings, you can click on Allow everyone to contact me. Options, Privacy settings. Tools. Oh, okay. I guess the software features will be same even in Macintosh. You don't find any privacy options? Okay, because of those settings only, I'm unable to forward you any message. Preferences. Can you check that? Uh, yeah, can you do that? Yeah, from WebEx. Yeah. Okay, no problem. If you get any chance to check that, you can do that. Okay. Okay, the other day we are looking at SAP work process. Okay, base process. the dispatcher and the work process. Yeah. R3 application services. Yeah, you don't think? Oh, okay. Yeah, I have to share my desktop. Yeah. Can you see my desktop now? Okay. Work process or services? They are programs written for SAP and which are used to process the user request. Okay, Ravi, you asked me about how much memory it will take in each word processor in the SAP. Ravi, it's a program actually. It will be the program will be these programs are used to process the user request. Even if I have 10 word process or 20 word process, these programs will be executed to process the user request. And no, the memory parameters are not dynamic or not static. It is a program. It will utilize the buffer and the system memory based upon our defined parameters. We will be defining, yeah, we will define the parameters for those. Yes, yes. It is not, the memory is not dedicating to each word process. So this word process, SAP R3 word process are two types. Central SAP services, SAP Central Services. So there are two services in SAP. There are central services. One is message word processor, and the other one is gateway word processor. Application services. Can you turn on the mute option, please? Mm-hmm. Uh, Let me check, but I don't think so. It will show you the SAP service running and the yeah, kernel services running. We will see that. Let me log into let me write all the work process and we'll do that. Update. We call it as dialog. Update V1 code. background MQ. So these five are application services. Means, uh, if you means if you install additional application server, then in additional application server you can see this work process, and in the central services you can see message work processor and gateway work processor. Message and work gateway are both are unique. I mean, it will be installed only one time, and it will be configured on one SAP server. And this application work process, you can customize to this application work process depending upon the request. I mean, your workload and the type of request. See, then this dialog work process will take will process the DYN Pro operations or the all the DYN Pro operations. The DYN Pro operations are, you know, are very general operations which are usual, such like read the database content from the read the records or tables from the database content, but it won't update. It will just read and navigating between the SAP screens and any data reading the data read but not write, and authentication will be done by dispatcher, and soon after the authentication the user request will be sent to the dialog work processor. You can see the work processor architecture here. From the user point, user request and authentication will through. Once the user is authenticated, the request will be sent to the dispatcher, from dispatcher to the SAP work processor. And SAP work processor has different components. You can see internal memory, screen processor, adapt processor, database interface. Now, this process will be activated from the task handler. User request first will be sent to the task handler, and from task handler it will be forwarded to the screen processor or adapt processor or database interface, and the inter-process data will be stored in the internal memory. So SAP work processor will have internal memory. It is a buffer, and that buffer is of two types: so role memory and page memory. So you can say role memory is used to store the user context information, and page memory is used to store the application settings. So it is just like a cache memory in our operating system. So role memory will store the user contact information once the user logged in, and username, user password, and user access list. And the page memory is called as application buffer and stores the application settings, the current opened application settings. So every user will have the role user context data and storing the role memory, and application page memory contains the application settings. And this buffer size we can initialize in this SAP environment, because most of the times you will get an error messages with the stating insufficient space to process the request or to execute the program. You get a timeout error sometimes. Those errors we can set using the SAP parameter values. So we can increase the size and we can increase the time for execution, and those settings we can do from the SAP point of view. So dialog processor regular operations like navigating, screens and data for reading but not writing. So update work processor will write the information in the database. If you want to write any information, if you want to save any information in the database, then update work processor will be activated. If it's from dialog work processor, the request will be forwarded to update work processor if you want to modify the content in the SAP environment. Spool will take print request, complete print request, and for background, job execution, background jobs are back execution. This is the log management system. So you can see in the SAP screens which processor is active, which work processor is active, and which work processors are free. That information you can see from the SAP screen. Okay. Each word processor will have this buffer memory, and it is called page memory and role memory. So we call the operations in the page memory page in and page out. Similarly in role memory, roll in and roll out. And this memory page and this buffer size we can define from the parameter. RZ10 is the key code to define the buffer sizes. So SM51. So SM50, you can see that means the work process statistics. So dialog work processor is because I'm navigating the screens. That's why dialog work processor is been used for my request. So it is very slow because you can see only one dialog one and two dialog work processors are only two work processors are there. Two dialog work processors are there. Because of that, my system is very slow. But if you schedule any background jobs, it will be very fast because you can find many 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 background work processors are there. So this is only each work processor will have this architecture. You can see work process contains from task handler, the, the, the control will go to screen processor, adapt processor. See, screen processor means screen's navigation is through screen processor. Adapt processor is for suppose if you want to get any code from the database, then adapt processor has to be activated. A database interface, database client, through database client it will go to the database, and memory, internal memory, we call it as internal memory. So these are the contents of the word processor in the SAP. It is a program. Word processor is a program. It is a message word processor. So message word processor is a Unix. So message word processor will establish a relation from different instances. So what do you mean by instance again? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I'll send today. Yeah, this copy I'll send you today. Yeah. Message word processor. No, it it allows. I mean, not allows. It means if any application server wants to communicate with any other server like database server or central instance or any other application instance, so it has to be through message word processor. So it will exchange the messages for SAP instances. It means this is an instance A, instance B, and instance C. So instance A will come to instance C through message word processor. It will communicate to instance C through the message word processor. Means first time when we deploy SAP system, we will install central instance, and then we'll go for database instance, and then we'll go for application instance. So in SAP instances, one is called central instance. Central instance will have message and gateway services. First time when you're deploying central instances, we'll have central message and gateway services, and during along with application services. Second one, database instance, create and load of SAP database in RDBMS, any RDBMS that you are using. This is optional. If you want to go for additional SAP system, then you'll go for application or dialog instance. It is for load balancing. So in this scenario, so yeah, central instance, it has message server and gateway server. Along with these two, it will deploy other server process. And if you go for additional dialog instance, then you can see most probably we will go for additional dialog instance because to have more number of dialog work process or more number of background work process. So spool work processes are not much required because it is dedicated. It is used to process the print request. And a lot NQ word processors are it can be either one or two because it is used for the lot management system. If lot management system means if any object is being used by one user means that the object is used for only that user. For other users that object will be locked. Means at a time only one transaction can happen in the SAP. No two transactions can happen simultaneously. So by default, there is a built-in feature in SAP, and that will be active every time, and that word processor is called NQ word processor. So message services will be deployed during the central instance, and the central instance server is called message server, and gateway services, gateway word processor, it is manually has to be enabled. Means you have to configure the gateway services manually during the SAP router setup. So we do SAP router setup, and during SAP router configuration, we will enable the routing services in the SAP server. So that server will use to route the request from one SAP system to another SAP system based upon the configuration. Yes, 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 yes. You will start the SAP installation with central instance. Let me explain. Central instance, first time, if you want to install, see, uh, uh, you will install the operating system on any server, and after operating system, you will go for prerequisites just like IP, Java, virtual memory, and RDBMS, Oracle. So this completes the prerequisites, and after this, you're supposed to start the SAP installation. So in the SAP installation, the first step you do that central instance. Central instance will configure all the central services. Along with that, it will configure uh, the application instance services. And the second time, if you are trying to install central instance in any other server, that will become another independent SAP server. Yes, database. Yes, yes. And database instance will be started after central instance installation. So database instance is to create the database in the RDBMS, and it will load the database content, by default content, all the content in the database. And after that, if you take any other server, and you will integrate the other server with the SAP central instance, and that is your application instance configuration. So during the application instance installation, it will ask you the central instance server name, and it will ask you the message server name, it will ask you the database server name, everything you are supposed to give there, and it will connect to that server during the installation, and it will start the process. So this will be one single SAP system with single SID and single database. If you install again SAP central instance in any other server, that should have the database again. You have to execute database instance again. It will become another SAP server. So central message server, so message server has to be started before you start any instance in the SAP. So if you want to start the SAP services, first service it will start is the message server. Then only it will start the other service. If you are unable to start the message services, then you can't start the SAP services. So this is the startup process. SAP start server.exe. So start message server first, and then database server, and then the OS integration, service integration, and then the kernel. So from the command line, you can do that. Initially, if we use command lines to start the SAP services, later on we got the GUI tool, but initially we'll be using this in Unix environment. We'll be using this SAP start.exe command to start the SAP services. We can do that from even in the Windows environment, but instead of doing command line, we can directly go to GUI, SAP Management Console, and we can start the SAP services from the Management Console. It is called MMC, Management Console. So during the startup process, it will check the profiles, and I'll tell you what are the types of profiles are there. It will check the profiles and it will load that profile, and based upon the profile settings, the SAP will be started, and SAP contains those profile settings. And environment variables, it is by default set during the installation. So actual start process is this: message server, database server, OS integration, and the kernel. And the screen elements after you log into the SAP system. You can see the first is the menu bar and the standard toolbar. This is command field where you can enter your T codes, the commands, SAP commands. Other options, title bar, and the application toolbar. This application toolbar will differ from one window to another window. Standard toolbar will remain standard. Menu bar will remain same. And in each window, each application window, you enter to application window from the command field. The application toolbar will differ from one application window to another application window. The input fields, radio buttons, tab, checkboxes, push button, and status bar. So standard here it is menu bar, standard toolbar, command field, title bar, application toolbar, and the status bar. So let me show you. Menu bar, command field, standard toolbar, title bar, application toolbar, and the status bar. In the status bar, you can see that. Status of the status system, client, user, program, transaction, response time, interpretation time, and the round trip time. So as I told you, the data structure in the SAP R3 database. So the SAP R3 database in the earlier class, I showed you the client and the repository object. The client contains as application data, client-specific customization, client-specific, but not cross-client settings. This is client-dependent, but not client-independent. So the client-specific customization and user. Every client will have user master record, application data, and the client-specific customization. So I'll log into the client. This is my 800 client. So 800 client will have the application data, user master record, and client specific customization. But I logged into the 000 client. So 000 client is different from the 800 client. But all these clients will be in the same database. But the client will use the same repository objects. But the client settings are different. So each Means each client will have the respective data in the database. And these repository objects are common for all the clients. Means development which are used for development and modules, and each application module will have some certain classes which defines the application settings. SAP has some, yes, by default, by default we'll have two clients, and out of these two clients, one client is a template client where we can create further clients. Server will be the same, one only, but in one server, SAP server will have multiple clients. Each client will have this data structure. As I told you, 800 is one client, 000 is another client. So the client starts from 0002 999. You can have till 1000 clients in the SAP environment. Yeah, in one server. Server means it is a server. SAP server means it consists of central services, application services, and the database. So I mean to say, database can be in one server, application services can be in one server, central services can be in another server. But in SAP server, this complete is SAP server, SAP application server, SAP database server, SAP central server, message server, or SAP gateway server. In one SAP deployment, you can have 1000 clients can be configured. How the client will be created and those client administration part I'll take care later. And SAP profiles. So SAP has some standard profiles. So these profiles will be generated during the installation. So there are three types of profiles in SAP. One is start profile. The other one is instance profile. The third one is default profile. Let me see what is the use of start profile and what is the use of instance profile and default profile. The start profile contains the parameters to start the SAP services. Instance profile contains the SAP application settings. Default profile is the default. You cannot customize that. Even if you customize, it will be standard. Let me log into one of the SAP systems to show all these profiles. So SAP profiles will be stored in the USR directory. In the USR, in the SID, sys profile. SAP SID. So you can see, you know, default profile. This is an active default profile. I can delete this profile. That is not in active. Default profile and the backup of default profile. Right click open. This contains the default settings just like database server name and message server name, application server name. So SAP server name ECC, SAP DB host influx, the message server host. So this is the parameter for message server. Inflex. Gateway server, Inflex. Gateway services enabled in Inflex. These are TNS server, transport server, ECC. These are the other settings. Okay. So these are the default settings. Suppose if you change the database server, then it has to be updated in the default profile, or else your SAP will not be integrating to the database. It contains the default parameters of the SAP. In start profile, you can see this contains the startup process of the SAP. SAP server system name, ECC, instance name. This will be the instance name. The instance name will define, D for dialog, V for update, E for NQ, B for background, M for message, G for gateway, S for spool, 00 is the instance number. So this is the instance name of the SAP system. Suppose if your instance number is not 00, then your instance name will become different, Instance number will come here. SAP system instance number is 00. Global host, the central services, will be deployed in the Inflex. I can see some disturbance from one of you, not sure from whom. Can you just turn on your mute button, please? Mute option. From this Skype, you can mute the, yes, thank you. DB server, so DB server parameters are defined in this batch file. STRDBS and start program. So the next step to start program, this is from DB, it will start here, and message server directly it will go to the message underscore msg underscore server.exe. And third process, the first process is to start the database. Second process is to start the message server. The third process is to start the kernel. You can see that this is to start the database kernel. And the next one is internet graphics services. This is for logging services, actually, to log the data and to enable the graphics mode. This service will be enabled. By this service, it will be your graphical window will be activated. So these are the keywords to start the SAP instance. So this if you modify it here, suppose your message server is in a different host, and that host name has to be configured in the default server first, and then it will be updated in this profile, start profile. So this start profile will define the startup process of the SAP. Just like how do we boot the operating system, the booting procedure is defined in a boot.ini. Similar to that, the SAP start services start procedure completely defined in the start profile. The next and very important profile is the instance profile. Instance profile contains all the work process information and other parameters. So you can see. So by default, when you click on application server, I'll get 800 client. So manually I change to 000 and I'll log in. I'll show you here. See, I'm getting 800 client because the parameters you can see here, login system client is 800. If you set to 000, by default it will come to 000. SAP system name is ECC, instance number, server instance name, SAP system number, and the other parameters you can see, work process number of dialog 6, work process number of background 2, work process update 1, update 2, enqueue, spool, global host, and physical mem size. You can see the memory size is defined here. It is at OS level, but you can define at SAP level also. And directory or a home, you can see Oracle RDBMS directory. And the trans directory, if you are trying to transport any data, by default, the data will be transported from the trans directory to any other system. So work process information will be present in the instance profile. So these profiles we can manually change from at OS level or at from SAP level. From SAP level, as I told you, the key codes to change these parameters are RC10. Extended maintenance profile name, you can select the profile name. If suppose if I am trying to change the instance profile, select the instance profile. See, the version is 13. Next time if you change the instance profile, the version will become 14. So these are the parameters. Earlier I'm getting some error messages, and that is a buffer because of size restriction. So I changed from 2 lakhs to 4.5 lakhs. So now I'm not getting any error messages. So this is my parameter changes. You can change parameters directly from here. I will give you a list of parameters, or you can find the parameter names and other details in the material. The material that we have sent you, 5 weeks material, you can find there, or if not, I'll in one session, during that session, I'll give around 20 to 30 parameters, and I'll explain you about those parameters. So ICM is, this is for internet services, internet transaction server, to enable that. So this ICM port will be used. See, this port details, and some of the details are not present in the instance profile at OS level, but I have defined in the SAP environment. So it means after logging into the SAP, these profile settings will be activated to the SAP users. So most probably you can reset all the profiles, you can reset all the buffer. If you get any error message saying that if the size is insufficient and buffer overflow, then you can use some commands to reset the buffer size completely. It will empty the buffer. So these profiles will be deployed during the installation. And one more thing, after installation, first time the post-installation task is you have to upload these profiles from OS level to SAP level. By default, in SAP application server, after you log in, there won't be any profiles exist in the SAP system except default profile. So you have to upload instance profile and start profile into the SAP environment. I'll just define SAP installation steps. from OS level, install OS. These are general steps for Unix and Linux environment. But after installation, I'll explain you the the file structure of the SAP. In Windows is different and in Unix it is different. TCP IP config host file configuration. So what do you mean by host file configuration? You can just go to drivers. So this host file configuration is IP address and the host name has to be given. So the SAP system will communicate using host name but not IP address. That's why. So IP address host name has to be resolved to the IP address. So for that purpose, we will define the host file configuration. We'll use a host file configuration. Virtual, or we call it as swap file configuration. So it is recommended to have Java installation. Java versions are based upon the SAP version, Java 4.1 or 4.2 or Java 5 or Java 6. That depends on the Java SAP version. But you will get Java plugins and Java setup files from the SAP dump file. So this processor is on a standalone computer, not in the domain environment. Domain environment. If you are using domain environment, you need not to configure the host file configuration because you will have DNS. Oracle installation. Just remind me, I'll forward you a Oracle installation document on Unix environment. I have that document, I'll do it. So these are the prerequisites to start the SAP installation. Then after this, we'll go for SAP central instance installation and database instance, SAP GUI, that is client software. SAP installation, central installation will not take more than 30 minutes. This will be it will be around 10 to 15 minutes. I mean, not 15 minutes, hours. So database instance will be taking more time than the central instances. So I have the screenshots also, how to install the central instance and database instance and how can we start the SAP installation. So what I'll do in our next session, what I'm planning is to start the SAP installation. We'll start the SAP installation in our next session. So database, I have a copy of Oracle. Yes. Oracle installation on Unix environment. I guess Linux or Solaris. I have Solaris and Linux document. So hardware construction as that is. It is very clear. All the setup is there. All the step-by-step configuration is there. All those are 16 steps. And using this directly, you can deploy the Oracle Linux installation, Linux based. Windows platform, respect of the platform. During SAP installation, SAP creates two OS user accounts. One is SAP SID ADM, for example, PRD ADM. This will be one user. Another one is SAP service, SAP SID. This could be SAP service, PRD. These two accounts will be created. The first account is for SAP, we call it as SAP basis, SAP not basis, administrator account at OS level. SAP service account. Next, for any basis, for any SAP administration at OS level, you're supposed to log in with this account in the SAP system. So I'm logging in as a administrator account. So this administrator account is only administrator in the for OS. So here I'll show you the difference. So DIS P work and command cannot be recognized because for administrator account the environment variables are not being set, or this environment SAP environment variables will set only for SAP administrator account, but not to the administrator account. For more information, we can go and check the properties of SAP administrator. SAP administrator is a part of these profiles only. Hello? Hello? You can see he is a local administrator, is a local system administrator. Apart from this, he has operations to, he has rights for SAP administration account. And these group users, administrator account by default is not part of all these groups. Only SAP basis, SAP administrator account will be part of all these groups. These groups will be created during SAP installation. Okay, let me check the administrator account. See, administrator is not part of all these SAP groups. That's why this is by default administrator. If you log in as an administrator account, you can't do any basis tasks. I mean to say you can't do any SAP application tasks. You, as administrator, you can control only the complete system, but not the SAP applications. At OS level, if you want to execute any SAP commands and if you want to access any SAP commands, and that will be done only through SAP account. So at OS level also we have the administration part, and that has to be, means we have to log in with SAP account. So we will discuss the database concepts using the SAP account. We'll log in with SAP account, then we'll discuss. So I'm not sure what password they configure for this account right now, or else I will change the password and flex. So let me log into administrator account. This is administrator account. Let me log into SAP admin account. So it is ECC ADM. So from anywhere, DSP, well, I can execute the commands because the environment variables are set for this account, but not for the administrator account. All the base SAP and ORT environment variables are set to this account. When you compare to SAP base administrator account, you can see SAP local administrator account and the SAP administrator account. There are differences in the user profiles. So we log in with SAP administrator account to modify, to execute any of the SAP commands. And service account, the service account is used to initiate, to start and stop the services of the SAP. You see SAP services, two services are deployed by default during after installation. SAP ECC underscore 00, this is the application service, this is a kernel service. So right click properties, go to log on. So this application service will be started using the account SAP service ECC, and the other service will be started using the account SAP service ECC. SAP SID underscore instance number. SAP creates two services during the installation. One is SAP SID underscore instance number. This is one service, and OS call. SAP OS call is another service. This is another service. Means all the SAP routines and SAP interfaces through to OS will be accessible from SAP OS call, and SAP instance will be started from the other first service. So these two user accounts and groups also will be created. Two user groups and user accounts and groups, SAP groups. SAP groups are created, and two services will be deployed during the SAP installation. So I'll plan to start the next session with the installation. I'll prepare this week. I'll prepare the SAP software dump, and I'll choose a server here. I'll select a server, and we'll plan installation in the next session. And I'll forward you the installation screenshot of the setting of the installation. So further, you can, if you have any software, you can do that. Any questions? You have any questions? I'll forward you the files. Yes, SAP startup, and the other one SAP install. Hey, I mean, Ravi, can you forward that link? I guess that link is still active. Oh my god, I can't. Hey, Elizabeth, I mean, the materials, FTP link, I guess. Do you have that link? Or else I'll do, no, Elizabeth, I'm talking to Ravi. I guess Ravi, Bob, they have that link. Yes, downloading. Okay. Elizabeth, I can't forward you the files because you are not online. It says it is, you might be in the invisible mode. Mm, can you check that option today or in this weekend? Because I can, since, or else I have to forward every time through email. Yeah, you can find in the Google any option you can for privacy settings. Or else I'll try if I get any chance to get the procedure in Macintosh system. It is as similar as Windows environment, but I don't know why you are not, why your software is different in that Macintosh. Oh my god, I'm just a mess. Uh, yeah, Bob, you have to accept one more file. Uh, yes. Yes, I sent it. Let me send the Oracle document. I guess it's about 1 MB file. One by one I'll do that. Ravi, can you forward, Ravi or Bob, can you forward the same docs to Elizabeth also through email? Yeah, thank you. Hey, you guys have SAP client software, am I right? You can connect to the server. Okay. Uh, Ravi, what I'll do is I'm forwarding you the Oracle document to you. I guess this may take long time because of 1 MB file through Skype. You can forward later on to Bob and Elizabeth through email. I guess through email it will be done in very short time. Yeah. This is on Unix and Linux environment. See, we don't have the software to install the SAP in Linux environment, or else I would have shown you completely on Linux or Unix environment. So for training, we will be using only Windows environment here in Inflex. Yes, I'll do it. Yeah, no, I'll forward you. Because already I'm sending the Oracle file, and if I forward the other file, it will stuck, I guess. Yeah. Tomorrow I'll schedule a session for other batch students because the NetViewer console, under console, 1 hour is not sufficient, and if I stop after 1 hour, that remains that remains incomplete. That's why tomorrow I schedule a session for other guys, and if you want to join, you can join tomorrow. Uh, 7:30 p.m. CST. It's maybe starting at 8 p.m. No, that's a yeah. No, not for you batch. Okay, later on. Okay, let it be. I'll be discussing in our session. We'll, because I'm covering the NetViewer topics tomorrow for other batch students, other guys. Okay, anyway, we'll be covering later on. We'll be discussing later on. Leave it up. Let me forward the file. Which folder? SAP intro. Bob, can you accept the file? Ravi, I have sent you also. Okay, yeah, got it. Yeah, no, Bob. Forward Bob, Oracle document to Bob.